Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Especially those of you who are interested in prepping for the UPSC exam.
Right.
We are back for part 2
Yeah.
of our Modern Indian History series.
Part 2.
And we are diving deep into an event that was really a turning point in India's fight for freedom.
Big one.
And that is the INA trials of 1945 and 1946.
Yep.
And you know, the thing about this
Yeah.
is that it really wasn't just a courtroom drama.
Right.
It really kind of shook the British Raj.
It did.
And it really ignited like a fervor for freedom
For sure.
across India.
It did.
So before we get into the trials themselves,
Yeah.
I just want to ask you to set the stage a little bit.
Sure.
So those who maybe aren't familiar with what the INA was all about,
Yeah.
can you kind of give us a quick rundown?
Certainly of what that was.
So the Indian National Army,
Mm-hmm.
or the INA,
Right.
was formed during World War II
Okay.
with the express aim of achieving India's independence
Right.
from British rule.
And it was initially together under Mohan Singh
Uh-huh.
back in 1942
Right.
with the support of the Japanese.
Okay.
But it was later revived and really gained momentum
Wow.
under the leadership of, well, you probably know who.
Oh, come on. Talking about Subhas Chandra Bose.
Right. Exactly.
This is where it gets interesting.
It does.
You see, because a lot of Indians,
Right.
they were serving in the British Indian Army.
Right.
And they were captured by the Japanese during the war.
Mm-hmm.
And this presented like a very unique opportunity
It did.
for Bose.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to kind of appeal to these soldiers' sense of patriotism
Right.
and urge them to fight for their own nation's freedom.
So their own country.
Wow. So, I mean, that must have been such a complex situation
It was.
for those soldiers to be captured by an enemy power.
Right.
And then be asked to fight against the power that you were already serving,
Right.
albeit unwillingly.
Yeah.
Did they even have a choice?
That's debatable. And the historical accounts vary.
Okay.
Some joined willingly, drawn to Bose's vision and charisma.
Yeah.
Others might have felt they had little choice.
Right.
But regardless of individual motivations,
Yeah.
the very existence of the INA
Uh-huh.
posed a direct and undeniable challenge
Right.
to British authority in India.
I can imagine.
It was a thorn in their side.
It was.
And as World War II drew to a close,
Uh-huh.
they had to figure out what to do with these rebel soldiers.
So the war ends,
Right.
but the British Raj is still hanging on.
They are.
Determined to maintain their control.
Uh-huh.
What was their initial response
Yeah.
to the INA?
Yeah.
I mean, was it just straight up like, punish the traitors?
Not quite that simple.
Okay.
Initially, they charged captured INA soldiers with a rather vague civil offense,
What does that even mean?
essentially waging war against the king.
Oh, okay.
But they quickly ran into a problem. It was a logistical and political nightmare, really.
I can imagine, I mean, thousands of soldiers potentially facing trial.
Right.
I mean, it would have been utter chaos.
It would have been.
Right.
So they decided on a selective approach.
Okay.
They were going to focus on individuals accused of what they deemed the most serious offenses.
Okay.
And this is where the story takes a turn towards the dramatic.
Right.
They chose 3 key figures
Okay.
to make an example of.
Okay.
Shah Nawaz Khan,
Yeah.
Prem Sahgal,
Okay.
and Gurbaksh Singh Dhillon.
Why those 3 specifically?
They were high-ranking,
Okay.
which made them visible targets.
Uh-huh.
But the British also had another rather cynical motive.
Okay.
These 3 men represented the diversity of India.
Interesting.
Khan, a Muslim,
Uh-huh.
Sahgal, a Hindu,
Right.
and Dhillon, Sikh,
Okay.
by putting them on trial.
Yeah.
The British likely hoped to portray the INA
Uh-huh.
as a fractured force.
Also, was a divide and conquer strategy?
Yeah. It's trying to undermine the INA's message
Right.
of a united India fighting for a common goal.
That's right.
But they didn't just hold these trials quietly, did they?
No, they did not.
I mean,
And this decision proved to be a major miscalculation on their part.
what do you mean?
Well, they chose to stage these trials
Yeah.
as public spectacles,
Uh-huh.
and not just any venue.
Okay.
They chose the Red Fort in Delhi.
Wait, the Red Fort?
The Red Fort.
That's not just any old building.
No, it's not.
That's the heart of Mughal rule.
Yeah,
It's a symbol of Indian power
That's right.
for centuries.
For centuries.
I can see why you said it was a miscalculation.
It was.
Yeah.
The British probably intended it as a display
Yeah.
of their own enduring authority.
Right.
You know, symbolic subjugation, if you
Right.
will.
Yeah.
But the effect
Mhm.
was the opposite.
Okay.
Holding the trials at the Red Fort,
Right.
this historical heart of India.
transformed them into a powerful symbol of resistance.
That makes sense.
Against the British Raj.
Yeah.
So we've got these high-profile trials
Right.
at a highly symbolic location.
Right.
The British trying to make a statement,
Yeah.
but perhaps not the one they intended.
Right.
Now, what about the Indian National Congress?
Yeah.
What role did they play in all of this?
Right. Were they sidelined or did they seize this opportunity?
Oh, they seized it.
Okay.
And brilliantly so.
Tell me about it.
They recognized the immense symbolic value
Right.
of the INA trials
Yeah.
and saw it as a way to not only defend these men, but to reignite the struggle for independence itself.
Wow.
They formed the INA Defense Committee,
Okay.
and they brought together a truly formidable legal team.
Wow.
We're talking some of the most brilliant legal minds in India at the time.
Give me some names.
Pulabhai Desai,
Okay.
Asaf Ali.
Mm-hmm.
Even Jawaharlal Nehru himself was involved.
Wow, that's a powerhouse lineup.
It was...
So they clearly weren't just going through the motions here.
No.
This was shaping up to be more than just a legal defense.
It was a brilliant political strategy,
Yeah.
using the trials to challenge the very legitimacy of British rule.
Interesting.
They argued that the INA soldiers were not bound by British law because they were fighting for their own nation, for their own rightful government.
So in essence, they were saying you can't judge these men based on laws that they don't recognize. Laws imposed by a power that they reject.
Exactly.
It's almost like a trial within a trial.
It is.
Like challenging the entire colonial system.
Precisely.
Wow.
They argue that the INA was the legitimate army of a provisional government. The Azad Hind government, established by Subhas Chandra Bose. They invoked international law. They pointed to precedents that recognized the right of colonized people to resist their oppressors.
That's fascinating.
That is.
So even as they're defending these individuals, they're also using the platform of the trial to make this much broader argument about India's right to self-determination.
Exactly.
I mean, did the British just dismiss these arguments?
Well, they couldn't completely ignore them, could they?
I guess not.
You have to remember, these trials were being held under intense public scrutiny.
I can imagine.
Newspapers were covering every detail. Word of mouth was spreading like wildfire. The courtroom itself became a stage for articulating the aspirations for Indian independence.
So it's almost ironic, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, the British intended these trials to be a showcase of their power and authority.
They did.
But they inadvertently gave a megaphone.
They did.
To the very movement they were trying to suppress.
A classic case of backfiring.
Yeah.
The defense team brilliantly used the trials as a platform to educate the public. Highlight the sacrifices made by the INA soldiers. And expose the injustices of colonial rule.
I mean, they basically humanized those soldiers.
Yeah, did.
Presented them not as traitors, but as patriots.
That's right.
Willing to risk everything for their vision of a free India.
Yes.
I can only imagine how that resonated with people.
It did.
But you mentioned public sentiment earlier. What was the atmosphere like outside the courtroom?
Think about it.
Yeah.
The trials are being held at the Red Fort.
Yeah.
This historic symbol. The arguments being made are striking a chord. So yes, people were very much engaged. Huge crowds gathered outside the Red Fort every single day, chanting slogans in support of the INA.
Wow.
Newspapers were filled with impassioned editorials. And even those who couldn't be there physically were following along closely. These trials became a national sensation, uniting people from all walks of life in their support for the INA and their cause.
So it sounds like the British had seriously misjudged the situation.
They had.
They thought they were putting down a rebellion. But they were inadvertently fueling it.
They were.
Spreading its message far and wide.
You could say they were handing the independence movement a gift, wrapped in their attempt to quash it.
Wow.
The INA trials gave the Congress a way to reconnect with the masses. After the suppression of the Quit India movement, they were able to tap into that public anger, that yearning for freedom, and channel it into a renewed push for independence.
Okay, so the drama's unfolding. The arguments are being made. Public support is reaching a fever pitch. So what was the actual verdict?
Well, Despite the compelling arguments of the defense team and the overwhelming public sentiment, the court found the 3 INA officers guilty of waging war against the king.
After all that?
Yes.
So what happened to them?
They were sentenced, but not to death as many had feared.
Okay.
The sentence was cashiered.
What does that even mean?
It means they were dismissed from service, stripped of their ranks and honors. They also received varying terms of imprisonment, however. And this is crucial due to the immense public pressure and the fear of widespread unrest. Their sentences were quickly commuted, and they were released.
So they were technically found guilty.
Right.
But in the eyes of the public, they returned as heroes.
Exactly. The Congress and various nationalist organizations organized grand receptions for them. They were hailed as national heroes.
Wow.
Symbols of courage and sacrifice in the fight for freedom. Their release was celebrated across India. And this only further fueled the fire of nationalism.
Wow, so the British tried to make an example of them. But instead, they ended up creating martyrs.
They did.
Further energizing the movement they were trying to suppress.
It did.
It really does highlight just how pivotal these INA trials were.
It does.
In the larger context of India's struggle for independence.
That's what makes history so fascinating. These seemingly isolated events can ripple outwards and change the course of entire nations.
Crazy.
The trials galvanized public opinion, exposed the, shall we say, moral inconsistencies of the British Raj, and perhaps most importantly, they demonstrated the power of organized resistance, the power of a people united in their pursuit of freedom.
Wow. It's a powerful reminder that history is shaped, not just by grand pronouncements and military victories, but also by the courage of individuals. Willing to stand up for what they believe in.
Absolutely.
And by the collective will of a people demanding change. Makes you wonder about the lasting impact of these trials, like beyond just the immediate reactions. You know, how did they shape the political landscape in the years leading up to independence?
That's a great question. And it's where connecting these seemingly isolated events to the broader historical context becomes so crucial. The INA trials were like a crack in the foundation of British rule. And they came at a time when the Raj was already facing immense pressure from multiple fronts.
I can imagine.
The war had drained their coffers. The global landscape was shifting. And back home in Britain, maintaining their grip on India was becoming increasingly difficult and, frankly, unpopular.
The world was changing.
It was.
And the idea of empires was losing its appeal. I imagine those trials provided more fuel to the fire.
It did.
Of anti-colonial sentiment.
Yeah.
Both in India and abroad.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It served as a stark reminder of the costs, both financial and moral. Of clinging to an empire that so clearly yearned for freedom.
I can imagine.
And perhaps even more importantly, it exposed the limits of British power. They could no longer just silence dissent or brush aside the demands of the Indian people. The genie was out of the bottle, so to speak.
So even though the INA didn't achieve its initial goal of militarily liberating India, the trials themselves became this unexpected turning point.
They did.
This victory of sorts for the independence movement.
They chipped away at that facade of British invincibility, emboldened the Indian populace, and ultimately hastened the demise of the Raj. Within just a couple of years, India achieved its independence.
And to think,
I know,
it all started with those 3 soldiers.
It did.
Shah Nawaz Khan, Prem Sahgal, and Gurbaksh Singh Dhillon, standing trial at the Red Fort.
Crazy.
It's a reminder that history is made not just by larger-than-life figures, but by individuals, by the choices they make.
That's right.
And the ripple effects of those choices.
Their courage, the brilliant legal strategy of the defense team, and the unwavering support of the people, it all came together to create this defining moment in India's journey to freedom.
It really is something that we, even today, can learn from and be inspired by.
Absolutely.
So for all of you listening, whether you're prepping for those UPSC exams or just curious about this pivotal period in India's past, the INA trials offer a wealth of insights.
They do.
It's not just about memorizing names and dates, but understanding the dynamics at play.
It is.
The motivations, the strategies, the legal battles, and the undeniable role of public sentiment.
Absolutely.
In shaping historical outcomes.
That's right.
It's about understanding the human element of history.
Yes.
The stories of courage and conviction.
That's it.
The choices people made in extraordinary circumstances.
Right.
It's about connecting those seemingly isolated events to the larger currents of history.
And I think what's truly remarkable about the INA trials is that they offer lessons that transcend any specific exam or historical period.
I see.
They remind us of the power of resilience, the pursuit of justice, and the enduring human spirit in the face of oppression.
It's a testament to the fact that history is made not just in grand assemblies or on battlefields, but in courtrooms where words and arguments can be just as powerful as any weapon.
It's a reminder that we all have the potential to shape the course of history, even in seemingly impossible situations. It's a call to action to engage with our past, to understand its complexities, and to draw inspiration from those who dared to dream of a better future.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into a truly pivotal moment.
For sure.
In India's struggle for independence. I hope you found it as fascinating as we did.
I did.
And if this has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to delve deeper.
Please do.
Into those individual stories of the INA soldiers.
Yes.
The intricacies of the legal arguments presented during the trials and the lasting ripple effects this event had on India's political landscape.
That's right.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Deep Dive.
Yes.
For more insightful explorations like this, whether you're prepping for exams or just love to learn. We'll continue to bring you these deep dives into history.
We will.
Unpacking those complex events and making those connections that help you understand the world.
That's right.
A little bit better.
A little bit better.
Until next time.
Yes.
Keep those minds curious and keep exploring.
Keep exploring.